In the bustling world of medical school, I shared a dorm room with Matthew Davis, a guy who seemed to defy every ordinary definition of a roommate. He was tall, elegant, and so devastatingly handsome that he was basically the campus royalty. Every single day, I found myself caught between admiration and frustration. Matthew was different. Aloof, yet caring, he would regularly bring me incredible meals and even run my bathwater. I initially thought this was just pure brotherly kindness. But everything changed when he looked at me one day and simply said, "Mason Taylor, I like you." This wasn't the first time I'd received a love letter for him. In fact, I'd become something of a professional letter courier for the campus heartthrob. The medical school's beauty queen would drop off love notes, and Matthew? He wouldn't even glance up. Perched behind his gold-rimmed glasses, nose deep in a medical textbook, he embodied the perfect image of a refined intellectual. Sometimes, I'd look at him and wonder if someone this pretentious deserved to exist. Thanks to Matthew, I lived in a luxurious two-person dorm. The trade-off? My non-existent love life. Despite being reasonably attractive myself, every girl's attention was magnetically drawn to my roommate. He was the medical school's prince, and I was just his loyal messenger. One particular day, my sense of injustice peaked. "Matthew Davis," I challenged, "did you learn some kind of witchcraft to keep everyone under your spell?" His lazy response was classic Matthew. "I don't do witchcraft. I poison people." The casual way he said it made me instinctively take a step back. A dark memory flickered in my mind. A med student who had once stabbed his boyfriend, carefully avoiding fatal areas to get a lighter assault charge. Matthew's comment about poisoning, combined with this memory, sent a slight chill down my spine. "You better not mess around with poison," I warned. "You have a bright future ahead." Matthew simply nodded and pushed a lunchbox toward me. Inside were 2 drumsticks, 3 wings, 4 prawns, and an entire king crab. My irritation melted instantly. Food was my weakness, and Matthew knew it perfectly. As I happily dug in, I could have sworn I saw a tiny smile cross his usually impassive face. Despite his annoying qualities, Matthew took care of me. He fed me incredible meals, prepared my bath, and maintained our living space with a precision that was both impressive and slightly intimidating. Our relationship was a complex mixture of tension, care, and unspoken understanding. "Full?" he asked after I finished eating. "Go take a shower and sleep." Then, true to form, he went to the bathroom to run my bathwater. As I nibbled on the last drumstick, watching him disappear, I realized our relationship defied simple explanation. After finishing my meal, I sucked my fingers contentedly and let out a satisfied sigh. "Bro Davis," I muttered to myself, "you're way too domestic." Something didn't add up. Why was Matthew so incredibly attentive? Was I missing a crucial piece of our shared history? My imagination ran wild with possibilities. Did I save his life once? Was he my long-lost brother? Maybe we shared a father, or a mother, or, wouldn't that be wild? We were full-blooded siblings? The more I pondered these ridiculous scenarios, the harder I laughed, grinning from ear to ear. Matthew, ever precise, finished preparing my bath and brought me a towel. He even started tidying up the table, his movements calculated and careful. "Bro," I thought, "you're more like an actual brother than a roommate." The jealousy I once felt about his overwhelming popularity had long since vanished, replaced by a strange sense of companionship. Who needed a love life when you had a roommate like Matthew? After my shower, I discovered Matthew sitting casually on my bed. "Bro Davis," I teased, "isn't it time we fixed your bed?" A week had passed since his bed collapsed, and he'd been sleeping in my bed every night. I hadn't really questioned it. He took care of me, so why overthink things? "Seriously," I continued, "why don't you just ask the school for a replacement? You're the medical faculty's golden child. They'd probably deliver a king-size bed right to our doorstep if you so much as hinted at needing one. He continued drying my hair, eventually switching to a hairdryer. The warm air made me drowsy, my eyelids growing heavy. I realized I was completely out of my depth. Having never lived in a dorm before, I had no idea what qualified as normal between male roommates. Sometimes I wondered if Matthew had some hidden motive behind his meticulous care. I remembered moments when he seemed on the verge of saying something, his expression unreadable, before stopping himself. But I always brushed those moments aside. My philosophy was simple. If someone wants to take care of me, why resist? Might as well enjoy the royal treatment. I drifted off to sleep with the carefree attitude of someone who had hit the roommate jackpot. After all, what could possibly go wrong between two guys? As I sank deeper into slumber, something pressed down on me. Through my foggy consciousness, I shifted uncomfortably. I vaguely registered Matthew watching me before the room plunged into darkness. My dreams took a sinister turn. Something heavy crushed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. I floated in that terrifying space between sleep and consciousness, where reality blurs and nothing makes sense. The weight felt too real, too present. My mind spun with panic. Was this the infamous sleep paralysis everyone talked about? Terror gripped me as I lay there, unable to move. My heart thundered in my chest, my brain screaming at my body to do something, anything. I kept my eyes squeezed shut, terrified that if I opened them, I'd find myself face to face with some horrific, sharp-toothed monster. The thought alone made my skin crawl. Better to stay still than have a midnight staring contest with something straight out of a horror movie. My internal monologue turned into a stream of curses. What kind of pint-sized ghost had the audacity to mess with me? Just wait until morning. I'd have my mom on speed dial, ready to send an exorcist to drag this supernatural pest straight to the afterlife. The shadowy presence remained featureless, but the dread it inspired felt painfully real. When I finally broke free from the nightmare, my heart was still racing. Sweat dampened my skin despite the air conditioning working overtime in the summer heat. Just a dream, I reassured myself, trying to steady my breathing. Nothing but a stupid nightmare. I reached out blindly for the AC remote on my nightstand, wanting to crank up the cold. My hand touched something unexpected. Smooth, firm, warm, slightly elastic. My brain short-circuited. Was there a snake in my bed? The thought sent me into panic mode, and I let out a blood-curdling scream. That's when I heard it, a low, husky voice right next to my ear. "Mason, shh, don't be loud. You'll wake the neighbors." Matthew Davis's arm was locked around my waist like an iron band. Suddenly, the mysterious weight from my nightmare made perfect sense. It wasn't some supernatural entity, just my roommate holding me way too tight. Matthew's hand found its way to my hair, stroking it soothingly, his voice impossibly gentle. After Matthew's reassurance, my panic subsided, but my brain hit a new kind of crisis. That smooth, firm thing I'd touched wasn't a snake, it was Matthew Davis's chest. I exhaled in relief, though I couldn't help noticing he had the kind of physique other guys would kill for. Then everything changed. My face flushed crimson as Matthew leaned in, his lips grazing my ear. "What's wrong? Don't like it?" I went completely still, my thoughts scattered like puzzle pieces. This couldn't be the same Matthew Davis who played the role of untouchable campus god during daylight hours. Was this his true self emerging in the darkness? A disturbing thought crossed my mind. Weren't the most proper-looking people often the most dangerous behind closed doors? Could Matthew Davis, with his cold, refined exterior, be hiding something darker? The realization hit me like a truck. We'd been sharing a bed for days now. My skin crawled as unwanted possibilities flooded my mind. What if he'd done things while I slept? I felt my innocence being threatened. "Get off!" I shoved him away, my heart racing. Matthew's soft chuckle in response only made things. The next few days became an elaborate game of avoiding Matthew Davis. That night's events kept replaying in my head, but I couldn't make sense of them. What was he really trying to say? Everything felt loaded with double meanings I couldn't quite grasp. During class, my friend Henry caught me lost in thought. "Mason, where's your head at? You're completely spaced out." I cleared my throat nervously, checked if anyone was listening, and gestured for him to come closer. Henry leaned in eagerly, clearly hoping for some juicy gossip. After a moment's hesitation, I decided to just ask outright. "Does your dorm ever, Henry looked confused. "What do you mean?" I clenched my teeth, struggling to find the right words for my uncomfortable question. Henry nearly choked on his own laughter. "Man, I thought this was serious. Of course that happens. Wait, you've never?" My ears burned as I gave an awkward chuckle. "First time in a dorm," I admitted. Henry's expression shifted to sympathy. "Yeah, well, with a roommate like yours, I bet you never get the chance." Then his face lit up with a mischievous grin. "Hey, Mason, if you ever get lonely, my dorm's always open." I caught his meaning immediately, my ears turning even redder. It made me think about Matthew, such a hypocrite, playing the untouchable god on campus, but behind closed doors, total different person. I forced a laugh and buried my attention in my food. Just as I was about to change the subject with Henry, I spotted him, Matthew Davis, walking toward us with a tray. He settled diagonally across from me, exchanged a few quiet words with his neighbor, and didn't even glance my way. Classic Matthew, maintaining his Ice Prince persona in public. Things had been weird between us lately, like an unspoken tension hanging in the air. The cafeteria buzzed with whispers. Why was the medical school's golden boy eating in the economics building? It was like watching ripples spread across a pond. Henry couldn't help but notice too. "Isn't that your roommate? Why don't you invite him over?" I shoveled rice into my mouth, mumbling, "He's busy. Let's not waste his time." But Henry was like a dog with a bone. Why would he come all the way here to eat? Maybe he's interested in someone here. He grinned, clearly enjoying the gossip. Wonder what kind of person could catch Mr. Perfect's eye. I choked on my rice, coughing and spluttering. When I finally looked up, I caught Matthew staring at me, his expression dark and slightly displeased. The look sent an uncomfortable shiver down my spine. Henry, now fully invested in his romance theory, pressed on. "Come on, spill. Who's he into?" That earlier look from Matthew still bothered me, making my chest tight with irritation. "How should I know?" I snapped. "Someone like him should just stay up on his perfect pedestal instead of coming down here to mess with people." I rushed through lunch, dragging Henry to the library, hoping books would quiet my racing thoughts. As we passed Matthew, he didn't even acknowledge me, too absorbed in discussing his research project. Funny how someone you've shared a bed with for days can treat you like a total stranger in public. Back at the dorm, I stopped dead in my tracks. There it was, a massive luxury bed in Matthew's corner. It wasn't just a single bed. It could easily pass for a double. Of course, the genius gets special treatment. The school's favoritism was obvious, leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. Then it hit me. No more awkward bed sharing with Matthew Davis. Relief washed over me as I gathered my shower things, humming happily. But stepping out of the shower, reality slapped me in the face. No towel, no bathrobe, no clothes. I'd gotten so used to Matthew handling these details that I'd stopped thinking about them entirely. After a moment's hesitation, I reassured myself. He'd been coming back late every day. No way he'd be here now. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open, and my heart stopped. There sat Matthew Davis, next to his enormous new bed, holding a black book with gold lettering, A Doctor's Compassion. His dark, unreadable eyes lifted from the page, scanning me with clinical detachment. Under my blanket fortress, I could feel his intense stare burning into my back. After what felt like ages, I risked a peek out for fresh air. My heart nearly stopped. Matthew Davis was sitting right beside my bed, still clutching that medical book, staring at me with unnerving intensity. How had he moved so silently? And why did his eyes look so different? Then he spoke words that made my brain short-circuit. "Mason, let's date." I lay there frozen, gripping my blanket like a lifeline, staring at him like he'd grown a second head. The words kept echoing. "Mason, let's date." Me? And Matthew Davis? The untouchable prince of medical school wanted to date me? My brain felt like an overheated computer, but Matthew's gaze never wavered. He clearly expected an answer, and his stare suggested he'd wait there all night if necessary. I reached out instinctively to check his forehead for fever, but the way his dark eyes deepened at my movement made me stop. Suddenly aware of my bare arm, I caught something predatory in his expression that sent a chill down my spine. I snatched my hand back as if burned, my ears feeling like they were on fire. After a pause, his voice came again, firmer this time. "Mason, what's your answer?" Everything started clicking into place. The food, the hair drying, the towels. This calculating bastard had been setting this up all along. He'd been crushing on me, and I'd been too blind to see it. His gaze burned with an intensity that completely contradicted his usual Ice Prince persona. Panicked, I blurted out the first defense I could think of. "We're both guys. Everyone would tear us apart. Matthew, find someone else to corrupt. Even if I suffocate under this blanket, I won't like you. I like girls." With each word, Matthew's expression grew darker. His lips pressed into a thin line, and I noticed his knuckles turning white around the book. For a moment, I wondered if I'd gone too far. But I couldn't back down. My parents always said, if you don't like someone, don't give them false hope. Better to be harsh now than cruel later. Under Matthew's soul-crushing stare, I doubled down on my rejection, stammering, "I like girls, Matthew. I don't discriminate against you, but you can't like me. I only see you as a brother." Matthew's face remained unnaturally calm, but his rapid blinking betrayed him. "Say that again," he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. The intensity of his gaze made my skin crawl with discomfort. Gathering my courage, I shouted back, "I like girls. Say it 100 times, and it'll still be the truth. You freak, stay away from me." The room plunged into suffocating silence. I heard knuckles cracking and risked a glance. The veins on his pale, porcelain. My heart stopped. Hidden under my blanket, my thoughts spiraled into chaos. That physical test was my last chance. If I failed, I'd flunk the class. And my parents' rule was absolute. No failing grades meant no allowance. The thought of living without my usual spending habits made me break into cold sweat. Matthew leaned in suddenly, his face uncomfortably close. I jumped, my heart racing. His cool hands gripped my shoulders, and under the soft bedside lamp, his dark eyes held an emotion that made me squirm. "Mason, I mean it. You wouldn't want to struggle for your next meal, would you?" Damn. He knew exactly how to play this game. Before I could argue, his lips were on mine, soft, like jelly. My face burned crimson. I shoved him away and shot upright like I'd been struck by lightning. His book fell into my lap, and one glance at the colorful illustration made my face go nuclear. "Matthew, get out!" Later at the cafeteria, Henry wouldn't leave me alone. "You're really not eating with me? Didn't we agree to study at the library after dinner?" I groaned, rubbing my forehead. "Plans changed. I have other stuff. Next time, okay? Go before your lobster gets cold." I tried desperately to get rid of him, terrified of Matthew showing up. If Henry saw what was happening, his big mouth would spread it across campus in hours. Then, as if summoned by my fears, that familiar voice spoke behind me. "Wrong gender," he stated simply. "I already have a boyfriend." The girl's face went through a rainbow of emotions: shock, disbelief, then hurt, as she bit her lip. She started to speak, but Matthew cut her off with brutal finality. Not in this lifetime, or the next 800. Back in our dorm room, the table was loaded with food. I watched Matthew methodically peeling shrimp, the question burning in my mind until I couldn't hold it back anymore. You just came out to everyone and dragged me into it. How am I supposed to find a girlfriend after this? Matthew didn't even look up. He just finished cleaning the shrimp, dipped the pearly white meat in sauce, and held it to my lips. Without thinking, I opened my mouth and took a bite. "Does it taste good?" he asked softly. I nodded before catching myself. "Hey, wait! You still haven't answered my question." He leaned in, close enough that I could see flecks of gold in his eyes. "You already have me. Who else do you need?" "Hold on," I protested. "We only agreed to try, and after that, You don't have a choice anymore." His voice changed, the gentle persuasion vanishing like morning mist to reveal something harder, more demanding. The real Matthew Davis was showing himself, dominant and absolutely unwavering. I gaped at him. "You liar! Me! You suffer from—" Before I could finish my accusation, he laughed, but there was something dangerous lurking in his eyes that made my blood run cold. He leaned in until his lips brushed my ear. "Why don't we find out tonight?" he whispered. The crab leg I'd been eating clattered to the floor as I froze in place. Matthew looked entirely too pleased with himself as he stroked my face with feather-light touches, then sealed his words with a kiss. "Be good." That night, I lay in bed clutching my blanket like a shield, my heart thundering in my chest. When Matthew emerged from his shower, he climbed into my bed as if it was the most natural thing in the world. His arms snaked around my waist, and he pressed soft kisses to my cheek and lips. It was almost funny how someone who appeared so cold and untouchable in public could be such a cuddle monster in private. But that was all he did, just held me and drifted off to sleep. I'd spent the whole night wound tight as a spring for nothing. As relief flooded through me, an unexpected thought crept in. Wait, had I somehow become less attractive to him? Morning brought a text from Henry that made my stomach drop. "Bro, you came out? The department beauty is telling everyone you and your roommate are dating." And sure enough, as I walked across campus that day, I could feel the change in how people looked at me, like I'd suddenly become someone entirely different overnight. People's stares followed us everywhere. Those knowing looks filled with barely concealed gossip made my skin crawl. But Matthew? He acted like he didn't notice a thing, happily parading me around campus like we were filming a romantic comedy. We covered every inch of that school, East Gate to West, South Gate to North, like he was marking his territory. And weekends? Those became his special torture sessions. Hiking was his new favorite thing, and my protests meant nothing. If I tried playing dead in bed, he'd just scoop me up, blanket and all, and carry me straight to the bathroom. Somehow, I'd end up fully dressed and ready to go, still half asleep, and wondering how he managed it. That was Matthew's special talent, taking care of everything without breaking a sweat. One morning, as I sat there munching my breakfast, it hit me like a lightning bolt. My face burned red as the realization sank in. I was getting comfortable with this. Too comfortable. With Matthew Davis handling every detail of my life like some kind of personal butler-boyfriend hybrid. Oh God, I thought in panic. Am I actually falling for this guy? "Are you running a fever?" Matthew asked, wiping crumbs from my mouth with that gentle touch of his. As he reached for my forehead, I jerked back like he was on fire. "Just eat faster," I blurted. "Weren't you the one who wanted to go hiking?" He gave me this long, quiet look that made my ears burn traitor red. By noon, we'd reached the mountain summit, and I was ready to collapse. Matthew wordlessly offered me water, but in my desperation, if you believe, it works. If you don't, it doesn't. There was something about the simple sincerity in his voice that made my heart falter. How had I never noticed this side of him before? The honest, earnest Matthew was proving dangerously difficult to ignore. By the time we headed down, exhaustion had completely taken over, and I found myself half asleep on his back. Running my fingers through his hair, I mumbled, "Most med students lose their hair from stress. How is yours still so thick?" "Less late nights, more exercise, better nutrition," he replied, surprisingly talkative for once. Feeling bold in my drowsiness, I declared, "If you ever go bald, I'm leaving you." Matthew paused for just a moment before nodding with mock solemnity. It was hard to tell if he was taking me seriously or simply indulging me, but somehow that made it even more endearing. "Got it," he said with an exaggerated sense of gravity. Then, with equal seriousness, he added, "But that means you'll have to work out with me too. Your health is your greatest asset." I laughed it off, but internally, I was screaming in protest. That semester became my personal fitness boot camp. Matthew dragged me out for morning runs and post-meal walks every single day without fail. Soon, the entire university was buzzing about how the medical school's golden boy had turned the track field into his personal romance stage. Even the professors took notice, pulling Matthew aside one by one for concerned discussions about prioritizing academics over relationships. But here's the thing. Under Matthew's relentless training, I actually managed to pass my 3,000-meter test. The gym coach even patted my shoulder with an approving nod. "Good job, kid," he beamed. "It's amazing what a supportive partner can do." As Matthew helped me walk away from the track, a realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. I spun around to face him. "Wait a minute," I accused. "Matthew Davis, you never actually planned to ask the coach to excuse me, did you?" He raised an eyebrow. "Did you pass?" "Well, yes." A slow, knowing smile spread across his face. "Your goal was to pass the test. I helped you achieve that." I rolled my eyes so hard I practically saw my past life. He handed me a water bottle and, in that infuriatingly calm way of his, added, "Now that you're in shape and passed your test, how do you plan to repay me?" I swatted him with the bottle. "Excuse me? That was my hard-earned success. Repay you? How about a well-earned retaliation?" Instead of arguing, he simply pulled me in and kissed me breathless. And because the universe enjoys embarrassing me, nearby students and professors actually started clapping. Of course, news travels fast, especially to mothers. During finals week, right after our last exam, my mom arrived to pick me up. Her timing couldn't have been worse. Matthew had me pinned against the dorm room wall, effectively kissing away my ability to think. "Mason, what on earth are you doing?" The door hadn't been fully closed. My mom stood there, her expression stormy. With a swift motion, she shut the door behind her, likely sparing our driver from witnessing the scene. I jumped away from Matthew as if he were on fire, my face burning hotter than the sun. But Matthew? Cool as ever. He calmly fixed my disheveled hair and straightened my clothes, before turning to greet my mother with impeccable composure. "Hello, Auntie. Please, have a seat." In one smooth motion, he poured her a glass of water, presenting it with both hands. His entire demeanor was a masterclass in how to impress your future mother-in-law after she catches you kissing her son. My mom took the offered glass with visible hesitation, sipped the smallest possible amount, then turned her piercing gaze on me. "Mason, what exactly were you just doing?" I stared at my feet, too mortified to form a response. My mom wasn't the type to yell. She didn't need to. One sharp look from her was enough to make the toughest person wither. I was just," I stammered. But before I could dig myself deeper into a hole, Matthew stepped in. "Auntie, we were kissing," he said plainly, his honesty making me want to disappear into thin air. But he held my hand firmly, meeting my mother's gaze without flinching. "I'm in a relationship with Mason. I apologize that you had to find out this way." All those feelings I'd been running from, pushing down, pretending didn't exist. They burst through every wall I'd built. I had to face the truth. I was falling for him completely, hopelessly. He'd woven his web around me so carefully that I hadn't even noticed until I was thoroughly caught. And his secret weapon? Pure, honest sincerity. Not smooth talk. Not mind games. Matthew Davis, the guy who showed the world nothing but ice, gave me everything. His attention, his care, his whole heart. Unreserved, genuine, almost overwhelming. Sure, he could be overly touchy sometimes, but at our age, that wasn't exactly shocking. I squeezed his hand tighter, and the way his eyes lit up, warm and full of such raw emotion, nearly took my breath away. My face burning, I found myself leaning toward him, wanting nothing more than to kiss him right then, until my mom's iron grip found my ear. Mason, home, now. That summer became my prison sentence. My parents cut me off from everything. No phone, no internet, no contact with the outside world. Instead, I got an endless parade of suitable options. Uncle Smith's youngest daughter just got into your university. You should look after her. Uncle Vollmer's eldest daughter is back from abroad. She's been asking about you. The bank's daughter really likes you. You should meet her. Day after day, my parents pitched daughter after daughter at me, determined to fix whatever they thought needed fixing. At first, I played along, nodding and apologizing just to keep the peace. But as the days dragged on, frustration built up inside me like a pressure cooker. Being cut off from everything, from him, was driving me crazy. Finally, I snapped. Started doing exactly what would drive them nuts. Every girl they introduced, I'd look them straight in the eye and declare, "I like men. I have a boyfriend." Cue angry exits, slamming doors, and my parents' combined fury raining down on me. Remember all those spankings I'd managed to dodge as a kid? Turns out they were just saving them up. But the real bomb dropped as the new semester loomed closer. Mom's voice was ice cold when she announced, "We're transferring you to a university abroad." My world stopped spinning. Disappearing without a trace? How could I explain that to Matthew? What if he thought I'd abandoned him on purpose? The thought of him alone in our dorm, crying under his blanket at night, secretly missing me, no way in hell was I letting him suffer like that. I fought back with everything I had, but Mom slammed her hand on the table so hard the dishes rattled. "You are never seeing that wild man again. He's the one who corrupted you. You're going abroad, and that's final. Cut all ties with him." Her composure cracked completely as she spat. "One more word, and I'll break your damn legs." Dad, playing his usual peacekeeper role, just sighed heavily. "Look what you've done to your mother, you ungrateful child. Pack your bags today. Your flight's tomorrow morning. Get moving." They were determined to tear us apart, and I was powerless to stop it. "You're fired!" I screamed, nearly flipping the dining table. But under their ironclad threats, I retreated to my room in defeat. I took out my frustration on my human-sized Ultraman plush, punching and kicking while cursing the universe. Then, tap, tap, tap. The sound from my window made me freeze. My first thought? Which idiot thief picked the wrong house tonight? Grabbing my baseball bat, I crept toward the window like a ninja. When I saw movement, I swung with all my might. The bat stopped mid-air, caught in one strong hand. Then that familiar, husky voice that made my knees weak. "It's me. I'm here to take you away." The bat clattered to the floor as I launched myself at him, clinging like a koala. Matthew wrapped me in his arms, one around my waist, the other cradling my head, holding me like he'd never let go. His warm breath against my ear sent shivers down my spine as he whispered, "I missed you so much, baby." My ears burned red hot. "Then why did you wait so long to come find me?" Matthew's lips brushed my ear as he chuckled softly. "Your parents were watching too closely. Sorry I took so long." I buried my face against him, breathing in that familiar scent I'd missed so much, feeling months of tension melt away. If you'd been any later, I would have been gone. His lips curved into a slight smile. Even if you ran to the ends of the earth, I'd still find you. You belong to me. The possessiveness in his voice, raw and unmasked in the quiet night, made my heart race. Then somehow, without either of us really moving first, we were kissing like we were starving for each other, like the world might end if we let go. When Matthew finally pulled back, breathless, his voice was dead serious. "Baby, are you ready to run away with me?" I hesitated for a split second, thinking about everything my parents had done, then nodded firmly. Matthew ruffled my hair, his usually cool voice warm with affection. "I'm fine. After all, I still have to carry you for the rest of my life." My face instantly felt like it was on fire, and I ducked my head to hide my embarrassment. Something clicked in my memory. "Hey, about those artificial wombs you mentioned before, is that really possible?" A slight smile played across his lips. "The world is vast. Nothing is impossible." His smile dazzled me for a moment, and before I could recover, he pulled me into his arms. His deep voice in my ear made me shiver. "But I don't care whether we have children or not. I only care about you. If you want kids, I'll find a way. If you don't, I'll just stay by your side forever." The warmth of his words filled my chest as I hugged him back, chuckling. "Didn't you promise your grandfather you'd work on this research?" Matthew's face went blank. "I promised to work on it. Never said I'd succeed." Later that night, my heart nearly stopped when I saw Matthew slip in the bathroom. I lunged forward to catch him, and even though he kept his cool, I couldn't help but fret. "Why didn't you call me for help?" Instead of answering, he asked quietly, "Are you disappointed in me?" I blinked, confused. "Excuse me? Shouldn't I be the one asking you that?" But he just lowered his eyes, looking hurt, but unwilling to explain further. The sight made my heart twist. This was Matthew Davis, Mr. Untouchable himself, who'd gotten his leg broken by his own family, risked further injury climbing through my window, all just to see me. The more I thought about it, the more my chest ached. I tugged his ear, my voice a mix of exasperation and tenderness.